Amy, thank you so much. I've known Al for so many years and become a good friend. Last November, Al tried to teach me fly fishing. I'm from Jersey. We don't fly fish. And for a couple of hours, he tried to teach me how do you do this? And eventually I took out my spinning rod and just threw the worm in the lake and drowned him. So help me welcome me Al Allison.
Well, good afternoon, President Tony and Charlotte Rotary. I hope y'all are doing well. Boy, that's going to be hard to follow. Amy, you're so articulate, as Bill said, and you're not from down here, but I am. I was not transplanted, I was planted. I'm still here. I think my feet and my roots go so deep, I can't quite leave, and I can't get this accent away. My daughter used to have me call. She worked for Condé Nast in New York. She worked for Bon Appetit magazine. And she'd have me call up there and speak over the intercom so I could talk Southern to them. I said, you got your tours? Where's your car at? So that's how I got where I'm at, is real appropriate, and it has a lot to do with this club. As Tony said, I had 5 minutes, so I prepared a 20-minute presentation, and I'm only going to do the last page. I might come back to some of the other stuff. Well, I can handle the time, I think. And I hope I will be able to inform you something about life and about this club. I'm going to start off in 1989, and I'm going to do the last 25 years. And then I'll go back to my resume if there's time left. How I got where I'm at. One of my life goals is to have good friends and good relationships. The object of Rotary, number one, is the development of acquaintance is an opportunity for service. And I believe acquaintance is the beginning of friendships. It's usually where they start. I believe I hold the record of being the longest visitor in this club. I started coming to this club in 1962 with my dad, and I was a guest, like some of these other young faces I see here. I enjoyed coming with my father. I learned things. We went to places, and I know some of the older members will remember this. There was some of the things that we did, and I'm going to tell you about how these Rotarians affected my life as I grew up. We would go to Honey's, where they served a hamburger about the size of a 50-cent piece, had a red apple, and a tossed salad with some Thousand Island dressing on it. And that was dinner. And we finally had to move. We went to Slug's Top of the Tower. Boy, that was really a neat place. And we had great food. Then we went to before I think Slug's, we went to the Minger Motor Inn, which was down there across from the Sears building. And these were, I remember having dinner with Ty Boyd and sitting next to him at one of those meetings. It was a neat experience. And I have papers, but I'm on page 2 already. These are a few things about Rotary and some of the people, and I'm not going to get everybody in here. There's so many people in here that have been part of my life. The first was my father, Charles Allison. They called him Charlie. He joined this club in 1961. He had a great childhood. I had a good, solid Christian upbringing. He took me fishing, and he took me to the river. That was the river. It wasn't Lake Wiley. And there wasn't a Lake Norman, wasn't here. And when we went to the river, you didn't own a lot. The lots were all leased by Crescent. And I think they sold the lots to us about 1970 for $11,000 a lot. And I think that's right. As I said, part of this program that I'm going to speak about is mostly the truth. It was a great time in that house, and we had an outhouse, a real outhouse. Now tell me I won't embarrass you, but it was real. It had snakes, it had crickets, and it had spiders. And that's what you did. And we didn't even have water. We would take the water to our river cabin in 1-gallon Coca-Cola syrup jugs. It was cool. The next person I want to mention was Charlie Trexler. Charlie joined this club in 1970. Brent Trexler is his son. I don't know, I didn't see Brent in here, but anyway, Brent's dad was a fine man. He loved Queens College as my dad did. My dad was also the chair, when he passed away, of the Queens College Grounds Department. The next person is Jim Barnhart Sr. Jim was a member in 1939. He's Jim Jr.'s and Sadler's dad. He was always my dad's friend, and they traveled together, and he had a lot of input into my life. Jim Barnhart Jr., he joined in 1971. He was barely out of college, and so he's been quite a stay here. He sponsored me in 1989 after I spent so much time avoiding this. And one little side story, I think Phil Van Hoy said, "Al, you've been here all these years, and you hadn't paid any dues?" And I said, "Well, Phil, not only did I not pay dues, but my dad bought me lunch." And I said, Phil said, "That," said, "You're pretty smart." And I said, "Yeah, I went to NC State and you went to Duke." I'm slowing it down, Tony. Jim Slick Evans. I would eat lunch with Jim Evans over at, he was a member, he joined my dad in 1961. And I'd eat lunch at the Diamond Restaurant, or we'd eat at the Cupboard, or we would eat Staney's down on North Trine Street. These were your meat and two vegetable places that all of us in Charlotte that grew up here knew about. Now, I know many of you that are from here remember this, but this club is special, and it's still special to me. Charlie Hunter. I remember going as an 8-year-old in Cub Scouts to watch the cows get milked at his farm. Hunter Dairies and the Republic Bank were Charlie's creation. He and John Stedman Sr. invited me to join Rotary somewhere in the 70s, but you can tell it took to 89 for me to come forward. Charlie got me involved in the Scout program, and I was part of he brought me on to the Eagle Scout Banquet Committee, which I served on for many years. I began my Rotary service when I was 20. After I got through school, I would help my father at the Rotary Scout Show that was held over at Freedom Park. And that was part of my involvement in knowing the people in Rotary. It's the reason so many people thought I was a member. I guess I was freeloading. Anyway, the next person was Barry Miller. He was my friend, and he was my children's dentist. Barry got me involved in politics, and he ran for mayor, and he ran for the state senate in an unsuccessful manner. It may have been that Charlie Hunter had me driving around town in a 20-foot motorized cow that said vote for Barry Miller. He was the past president of this club, too. Powell Majors, what can I say? Always encouraging, always an inspiration. I don't know what to say about Powell, but so many of us were touched. Ralston Pound, his son Tripp. Ralston's back there, sits in that corner. He's been there for a number of years. He's the son of, his son Tripp was a friend of mine in high school. And Ralston taught me boating in the Charlotte Power Squadron. I mean, that was one of my passions, is boating and fishing. Frank Timberlake, he joined the club in 1958. I'm going to go back once. Powell Majors joined in 1938, and Ralston joined in 1947, the year I was born. Frank Timberlake joined in 1957. His son Edgar was a friend of mine, and we started my fishing career at Freedom Park in the lake over there, because Edgar and Frank lived across from the beaches. Tom Warren. Tom was the scout executive when I earned my Eagle Scout Award. And he was the club secretary for many, many years. He did a fine job. But man, and Sandy back there, we've got a jewel. Thank you, Sandy. The next person was Bob Freeman. Bob worked with Governor Martin. I was his sign chairman for a number of years. But Bob learned to cook barbecue for political functions. That was a crazy way to get in. He was Jim Martin's administrative aide, if I'm not mistaken. But he cooked barbecue, and we all know about going to his barbecue house out there on Northern Road. And he's been a true friend. And the last person I'm going to speak of as an individual is Martin Waters. Martin was a friend of my dad. He joined this club in 1950. I've always admired him. He's been an inspiration, a true spirit. He's always supported us in scouting, and he was also a member of my scout troop, Troop 3. Many childhood friends are Rotarians, in this club. Chase Saunders, David Norman, Mike Rash, Wells Van Pelt. They were in my 1965 high school class. Others in my high school and my neighborhood friends were Jim Barnhart, Sadler Barnhart, Brent Trexler, Bob Breeds, Sam Ryburn, George Wilson, and Phil Van Horn. Phil and I were also in Troop 3, and we both earned our Eagle Award there. It's something that was special to us. Many friendships have developed due to Rotary. I can only express extreme gratitude to my old friends and my new friends. One of my statements is that the quality of your friendships is a measure of the quality of your life. So keep that in mind, and that's what Rotary is all about. And that was the end of my presentation. And as Tony said, I was going to get a standing ovation, that people would stand and leave before I finished, or I could finish and they would stand and clap. So one of the other, I will do a brief biography, so I can, and I will sit down very soon. My father was, I'm Charles Walter Allison III. My father was Charles Walter Allison Jr., and my mother was Louise Means Allison. My father was born in Mecklenburg County, my mother in Cabarrus County, and our ancestors have the roots that go back to the 1745s. We've not left, I've not moved around, I've not been anywhere else, I've only lived in about 4 houses. The most important things to me in my education was my high school degree and my education at NC State. But life education, I first went to college when I was 8 years old in Queens, and I took piano lessons. I drove my bicycle there. I was involved in Boy Scouts. I was an Eagle Scout. My Scoutmaster, Lo Walker, meant a lot to me, meant a lot to Phil and others. Martin Waters was also a member of that scout troop. I was also in a band. We started when I was 12. And we played all kinds of 60s music. We enjoyed it so much. We played for proms in the Charlotte area, and we traveled all over the state of North Carolina while we were in high school.
Where's all Monica?
I just had to leave it this one time. Chase has said it's time for me to sit down. A few more things. When I grew up, there was no air conditioning. We spent most of our time outside. We did not, we didn't lock our doors. And I guess the reason was we had to have the windows open. So what was the sense in locking your door if your window was open? I could go on about Clara Bell and Fred Kirby and Ray Charles. Listen to Ray Charles outside when I was 12 years old outside the Queens College. That was neat. That was cool. I want to tell some more stories, but I think it's time for me to leave. Thank you very much for listening to me.